Namaskar and welcome to Daily Global Insights, episode 248. A shout out to our viewers to like this program so that it can reach its maximum potential. Today is Sunday, and here are the main points. The Five Eyes Alliance to be expanded to include South Korea, India, Japan, and Germany. France has been excluded. Australia kept India in the loop at the highest level on the AUK-US deal, also called as AUKUS deal. Chinese aircraft, 10 of them, entered Taiwan air defense zone a day after military budget boost. And top headlines in the global news are: the United States says Kabul drone strike killed 10 civilians in a tragic mistake. Let's welcome Sridharji. Sridharji, namaskar and welcome to PGurus channel, Sunday edition. How are you, sir?
Namaskar. Good morning to everybody bright and early in India. Very happy to be here and looking forward to another exciting session number 248. I think you kicked off the news with, as usual, the Afghan. At last, after weeks and weeks, or at least 3 weeks now, close to 3 weeks, United States acknowledges that the airstrike, which was targeted at what was believed to be ISIS-K suicide bomber, turns out to be a NGO worker, and amongst the people killed are between 3 to 7. Very sad and quite tragic.
And the General and Chief of Armed Services, Mark Milley, confirms that the calls that he made were in line with his responsibilities, and the Defense Secretary Austin also apologizes. Sridharji, is this fallout containment or is this normal?
Typically what happens is when there is a tremendous amount of crescendo, and for the past 72 hours there has been the leakage of this book. The peril and anecdotes of the book are being discussed. And right at the top of that agenda is General Mark Milley, not Mr. General Mark Milley's, involvement, alleged involvement in making the calls, and his statement to Nancy Pelosi, etc., all came out. After a little bit of lull and quiet, General Milley himself has come out and stated that it was within his purview for him to make the call. The Republicans are saying they need to see the transcript, and they also need to bring him to a hearing so that they can determine. We have seen Antony Blinken's hearings, and we have shared some of the contents of that. This could be one of the big items on the agenda. If he did bypass the chain of command, the chain of command is the Commander-in-Chief, Secretary of Defense, and then, of course, the General himself. If he has bypassed and exercised without talking to any of these people, begs the question, what exactly the action that the Senate and the House will pursue, and whether he will resign if it happens to be true.
The Five Eyes Alliance is going to be expanded to include South Korea, India, Japan, and Germany. Again, France is excluded. The United States, the United Kingdom, and Australia craft a new security alliance that results in Australia buying submarines from US, replacing the signed agreement with the French. France and EU are irate at this, and France responds by cancelling all meetings and recalling its ambassadors from both the United States and Australia. Looks like there was a deal already in place between France and Australia, and now Australia has reneged from this deal. That's how I see it. Sridharji, your thoughts?
A signed deal between Australia and France. We covered this in Daily Global Insights, and we talked about a new, usually it is the Anglo-Saxon alliance, but we are seeing the French-Australian alliance. French has been very vocal about Indo-Pacific. They have deals with Japan, they have deals with India, they're our major supplier. And it was good to see them to be part of the Australian. Right under their nose, this deal has been pulled out. How it occurred, more truth will come out. So it's natural and needless to say that the French are irate. The EU is irate on two counts. One is this is to a fellow European nation, this event has occurred. They're still reeling under the impact of the abrupt exit without an exit plan that occurred in Afghanistan. They have had to scramble, and they're still pulling their citizens and other people who helped them during the NATO's footprint in Afghanistan. So they feel that United States is not a nation to be trusted and believed on matters that relate to security or partnership.
And a quick shout out to all our viewers to please like this program. We would like to see more people come and watch it. And Australia kept India in the loop at the highest level on the AUK-US deal. And India is set to procure 24 second-hand Mirage 2000 aircraft to strengthen its fighter fleet. Mirage is French, isn't it?
Correct. That's how aviation. Yeah, French. Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead, sir.
Yeah, yes, sir. Sorry, sorry, I interrupted. Yeah, my apologies.
No, please go ahead, sir. I mean, I just covered the news items. You can expand on it.
No, I think the very interesting, because if you recall again, just 2 or 3 days is probably today is Sunday, maybe around Wednesday, you had Australian 2+2 meeting in India. Both the defense minister and the foreign minister were in Australia, were in India. Just a few days prior to that, you had a whole set of intelligence officials in India, including the French, the Australian, and the British. And then, India had signed a deal with France on this Mirage 2000 aircraft, because that is needed for them to augment their fighting fleet. That also tells you some of the strategic things that are going on around the border. And Australia goes back and announces this deal with United States and UK, Australia and UK. So it seems like they don't want. There is a very strong trade agreement and investment agreement being constructed between India and Australia. We have again covered that in Daily Global Insights. They may be saying that there are reasons why they chose this deal versus something else. Remember, US has a lot of strategic interests in Australia, plus US also provides the strategic cover. Having said that, there is no justification, in my humble view, to basically betray France and move the other way.
And the EU is going to develop independent Indo-Pacific strategy driven by US decisions, most likely the recent Afghan exit. Is the US enabling re-emergence of Angela Merkel as the new head of EU and an accommodative Russia, China, Iran policy? This will also quell resistance within Europe, notably France and East European nations. And should Germany elect Angela's opposition, things could get very interesting. Sridharji, there's a lot we are saying here, essentially about a realignment of countries within the EU. So far, EU has been speaking with one voice. Do you see something's changed there, sir? And if so, was it good for the world or not?
I think again, we covered this in Daily Global Insights. Mm-hmm. EU feels let down, and EU feels it has a role in Indo-Pacific. Why Indo-Pacific, right? Going forward, I think we should use what we call as a very simple triangle, the 3 vertices of a triangle. The top, what says security, then you have trade and economy as the bottom 2 vertices. So these 3 pieces tied together. So any strategic decision that people make either revolves around security, that means it is tied to trade, it is tied to the domestic economy. So if 56% of the global economy is going to be transitioned to Asia, and Indo-Pacific is an important gateway, you can't be left alone, be not part of it. So therefore, the trade and the economic implications to EU has significant consequences. Hence, security is an important parameter that EU must address adjacent to it. So EU is saying, I'm not going to and catching the coattails of the United States. I must have an independent strategy to basically move this agenda forward. So therefore, on that basis, they're saying, even they've gone one step further, their trade and investment partnership with India. They will use India as the gateway into this broader Indo-Pacific strategy. Very significant development, sir.
And Chinese aircraft, 10 of them, entered Taiwan air defense zone a day after military budget boost. China's bid to CPTPP greeted with skepticism, and the United Kingdom is presently on top of the waiting list. What is China's goal to split US and Japan? It's a rhetorical question. Maybe it is true. Sridharji, your thoughts on CPTPP?
You remember, sir, we have done a very, very extensive coverage, what you call fireside chat. We drew Venn diagrams. We talked about what is ASEAN, what is regional cooperation for economic partnership, RCEP. Then we talked about CP, Comprehensive Partnership, Trans-Pacific Partnership, CPTPP. So when you kind of put all these things together, India recognized by having some bilateral partnerships, it'll take care of its interests. Japan took a very similar position, which is to say, I don't need to be in everything, but CPTPP is important to me. Why? Because Japan has trading agreements with many countries, with the exception of China. So what is China attempting to do? China is attempting to do is to get in and basically try to create some kind of a wedge between Japan and US. So the question, as it may be, so that seems to be the way China is going. Why? Because Japan is right now in the middle of a transition. Mr. Suga has stepped down. So there is a leadership vacuum. There's also a possibility one of the pro-Chinese diplomats in LDP may not make it. And if you recall, we covered that again yesterday, in the day before yesterday, in the Daily Global Insights. So these are all the factors that are playing. But I don't believe that they're all happy about China coming back in. Clearly, UK is going to be allowed. UK is going to be let in.
And in SCO meet, Prime Minister Modi highlights that Central Asia has been the bastion of inclusive, moderate, and progressive cultural values, developed common template to fight extremism and radicalization. The Afghan government formation is not representative of democratically elected representatives. That's what has been the theme or the impression one got listening to his speech at the SEO. Sridharji, your thoughts? I think he specifically omitted naming the word Taliban, isn't it?
He specifically excluded the word Taliban. There is no consensus, there is no opinion as yet whether the existing government needs to be recognized. Barring China, no other country has come forward. Including Qatar has recognized the specific, the new government, or the so-called government that is still being formed. It's not fully formed, or if it is formed, it's not announced, because there's a lot of still internal strife within the Taliban. So clearly, Modi ji has made two important points. One, it is not inclusive of democratically elected representatives. So somebody has usurped the power in a politically correct language. Second, he's also made another important point. He's saying whosoever is the presiding, this particular region has been an embodiment of inclusiveness and the evolution of broader cultural development over centuries. So whosoever is in the government should not allow the space to be used for radicalization and jihadism to prevail in the region. So there are very important observations, not just directed at Taliban or the present government, but also the SCO membership as well as to the world.
An Indian Minister of External Affairs and Chinese Foreign Minister meet on the sidelines of SCO, and IndianMEA emphasizes disengagement in Ladakh is essential. Both discuss Afghanistan and also emphasize radicalization and extremism will only revert to the status quo. I'm a little confused about the messaging. Status quo was actually peaceful in Afghanistan before the Taliban came in.
The status quo is not under occupation, so the status quo is under the prior Taliban administration.
Okay.
Okay, I think that they're saying that there is a new game in town. let the new game not be the old game in town. So clearly they're not equating Taliban to NATO and the peace that was prevalent, or the so-called peace that was prevalent. Actually, we need to go back and look at whether there was really peace or whether there was a bifurcation of the country into two parts. There was still considerable number of provinces which were still under the hands of Taliban, except they didn't make much noise. Only certain, the central perimeter and I would say probably some limited part of Afghanistan was under the control of NATO. They, for example, choose to ignore Kandahar. They had probably a semi-control over Mazar-e Sharif, but clearly, Kandahar was not within the purview of NATO. So what people are saying is that, because it is Taliban backing power, and worse, Haqqani is also part of the bandwagon. It looks like the Al-Qaeda has also come back in. So it is a recipe for disaster if the powers be allow it to deteriorate to that state. That is what has happened both during Russian occupation, post-Russian occupation, semi-quam during NATO, and now we are back to the in-between status quo.
And Iran is set to join the Shanghai Cooperation Organization as a full member led by Russia and China. Iran will now be able to exert influence in Central Asia and the volatile Afghanistan region. We have covered enough, so we are going to skip that to the next point. Naftali Bennett announces that he has no plans for direct communication with Palestinian leader Abbas. US will help Israel to further relationship with the Arab states in his meeting with Israel, UAE, Morocco, and Bahrain representatives. Remember that next week, everybody probably is coming to the New York City for the United Nations General Assembly meeting. Sridharji, your thoughts on how successful US will be?
I think US is going to be, US is just right now is on symbolic progress of announcements. If you take a look, in the last 4 to 6 weeks, West Asia has been completely absent in any of the engagements that are taking place. West Asia, right? We just concluded the first anniversary of the West Asian Peace Accords that was struck between Israel and the West Asian countries, right? So close on the heels of trying to do something, but I believe that it is just, what I call as token announcement rather than anything strategic happening. Sadly, Mr. Bennett has been very quiet, barring the U.S. visit. He has not, openly reached out. I think to some extent we can say that he's working with the UAE, most notably. His focus seems to be much more around Jordan and Egypt right now.
In the United States, the border surges and the state of mess under a Texas bridge captured via drone becomes the ugly face of United States. Nancy Pelosi says that capitalism is not working the way it should in making her case of changing the face of capitalism. So she's wanting to try to tweak it perhaps. Biden is back on his horse with focus on climate accords. Sridharji, let's kind of spend a few minutes, because we are doing okay today, on what is happening inside the Democratic Party. There was some maneuvering that took place whereby there was a bipartisan infrastructure bill that got passed. And then now something is piggybacking it, looks like, and the piggyback is so big that it is bigger than the pig.
I can't come up with all these wonderful analogies that you come up with. But anyway, so let me respond. When you have one horse to ride, then it's probably a little easier, notwithstanding the complications. Then when you have 4 horses to ride or 5 horses to ride, and you don't have a chariot which ties the 5 horses or 4 horses, then it's impossible to construct a ride. So that is the only closest analogy that I can think of. So you have the leftist groups, you have the progressive group, then you have those who are feel that they have to be sympathetic to the Islamic states. If you recall, Biden went out of the way to make his comments in his most recent press statement, which is to say, Islam is a religion of peace, so we must all be not taking any undue action. Then you have the what you call as the local socialistic groups which want state budgets and so on and so forth. So you have these 5 constituencies, each asking for a specific piece of action. If you talk about the progressives, they want complete deconstruction of the economy and distribution of wealth. They want education system to be changed. They want voting laws to be changed. They want defunding of the police. They want nationalization of the rules for the police. Then you take the other groups, which is to say, open up, rise of Iran. The emergence of Iran and the adjacent nations in the most recent past under Mr. Biden is a reflection of the active engagement of this particular group, right? So you can see it. Iran is in scope. Iran is right in the center of the negotiations. Iran is the ally with Baghdad and in this new kind of Middle East dialogue. So suddenly, Iran, which was out of kilter, is now right front and center. Iran has got a deal with China. It is supplying oil. Iran has a deal with Lebanon. It is supplying oil. We are supposed to be having a ban on oil trade on Iran. So you have that particular group which is very successful. Then you take a look at the Afghan exit. So Afghan exit was abrupt. And when you take a look at all the equipment that has been left behind, it begs the question, which group gave the advice? Everything will be fine, leave it there, and everything is going to go. But it just landed on the wrong hands. Then you have these various groups saying, for example, Nancy Pelosi, I need $200 million for this. Well, can we give something to Manchin's wife, so she runs the economic agenda? Then you have Yelman and AOC and all talking about, hey, you got to have climate, you got to kind of increase the taxes. Remember, tax the rich, the wall, right? So you have that particular group making that specific statement. Then you have the Palestinian sympathetic group, which says more aid should be given, more concessions should be given to that specific group. We had checks cut out from the stimulus program to that. So when you have these 5 horses, right? So therefore, which horse? So you have to you have to try to keep pace with all the horses. If one horse runs fast, the ride is going to fall. So this is what they're trying to manage in the budget situation of these various constituents. And they're going to, what did they do? They told the Democrats that, Republicans, you be bipartisan, we will get the infrastructure deal done towards the 6 different initiatives, $560 billion, extendable up to 1.2. These dumb Republicans said, no problem, we go with you. They broke away from the ranks. Now, Nancy Pelosi is saying, no. That is a different deal. It has to be tied to the budget deal. So now the Republicans are getting the cold feet because these 5 horses are trying to pull the $3.5 trillion budget and says this 1.2 is just adjacent. So these 10 Republicans who sided, whether they like or dislike, they are part of the 3.5 trillion horse, except there is no horse, right? Because they were not part of it. So this is people must recognize United States, what you see is not what you get. There's a lot of behind the scenes pushes and pulls that happen. And especially if you have diverse set of constituents who have all funded the Democrats rightly in electing them back to power, and their needs have to be satisfied. And those who are from India probably recognize this very well, especially when you have a Jamboree coalition government. Now you have here a Jamboree coalition set of forces driving these horses.
Yes, and one interesting thing before we sign off today is the fact that Ilhan Omar was demanding that the police be completely got rid of in Minneapolis, and looks like the Supreme Court there has said, this is the state Supreme Court, has actually said it is okay or something to that effect. Sridharji, can you just clarify this? Because I'll tell you why she might want to have this done.
Well, Supreme Court of Minneapolis has ruled that if people people choose to get rid of the police, then it is perfectly legal to get rid of the police. That's just the starting. It is going to shift to Illinois because Chicago is next in the target. Once that happens, it's going to go to Oregon. It doesn't stop in Oregon. It'll go to Washington State. From Washington State, it will make its way into New York. Why New York? Because it's another big state. Whether it will go into District of Columbia, Washington, which is also, these are all the hot spots where people feel that the police are irrelevant. So this is a precedence that is being set, and it's not a very good precedence.
Yes, indeed. And Ilhan Omar is actually guilty of a couple of frauds. And this has been determined. It has been covered extensively in right-wing media channels, of course. CNN wouldn't touch that with a 40-foot barge pole. But you can see the point, right? I mean, she doesn't want police. But Sridharji, just to your point about defunding police, see, in San Francisco, there is a rule.
No, it's dismantling police. Sorry, now. No more defunding. Dismantling police.
Dismantling police. Well, see, you know what played out in San Francisco. In San Francisco, the police said that I think if the robbery from a store is less than $700, that they are not going to act on it. So what happened? Many of the stores are actually closing down their stores right in the middle of the city. They have no other choice. If the police is not going to stop theft, then, I mean, so this is total anarchy. Is that what Democrats want? Democrats equal to anarchists? Is that what they want to say? But that's just me. Sridharji, I don't know if you agree with me or not, but this is where I think we kind of come to a close on today's program. We'll be back on Monday morning. If there's anything you would like to add to what I said, sir, please feel free.
No, I'll take 30 seconds. I think you're talking about the process. They're talking about the outcome. The process seems to be anarchist, but the outcome is what these people are choosing, which is to say, hey, he needs money. Remember, it's not fair. You have to give the fair share. So that's the fair share, sir.
Yes, indeed. And thank you once again for joining, and thanks for responding to my request for likes. Please remember that as soon as the program starts, if you start liking it, that would really, really help our cause. We had a slow start today, but we made up towards the back. Thank you very much. We'll be back Monday morning. Namaskar.
Namaskar. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful Sunday.